Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone. This is the Bennington Select Board's meeting. It's June 27th, and we're meeting at the Firehouse. We have a couple absent members tonight. Donald Campbell and Justin Corcoran will not be with us, but we still have a quorum for conducting business. I would like to have our members that are here introduce themselves. Jeannie, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Jeannie Jenkins.
I'm Michael Keane, and as I mentioned last time I was here, I'm still me.
And I'm Tom Jacobs, and I am still here.
My name is Jim Carroll.
And I'm Jean Connor.
Stuart Hurd, Town Manager.
And Linda Bermudez, who is our esteemed reporter and shall be so reported in the minutes. The first thing we always like to do is a pledge of allegiance. Would you lead us, Michael?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone. We have an interesting agenda. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Before we get to that, though, we do have a citizens' comment period. We allow 15 minutes for that purpose for matters that are actually not on the agenda. So any citizen that would like to, any citizen that would like to speak after the consent agenda is reviewed, I will invite you up to be introduced to the board. We do have a consent agenda that has been circulated, which includes minutes of June 13th and June 20th, and also the warrants that have been circulated prior to the meeting. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented, unless you would like to make another motion.
I'd like to move that we accept each set of minutes separately. I would have to recuse myself, abstain for the 20th.
Okay, and the second to that? Second. Okay, I'm comfortable with accepting that motion, noting Michael's absence for the June 20th minutes meeting. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
And that's the reason we have an assistant vice chair to remind the chair of what he should be doing, or her. Are there any citizens that would like to speak now that I've given you the opportunity to do that? If there aren't any, we'll get right into the first and important part of the discussion tonight with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. Dan, are you going to be leading that presentation, at least introduction?
Actually, I can do the introductions.
Please, somebody will, yeah.
We have Chuck Schwer and Richard Spees from the agency, Department of Environmental Conservation. These two folks have been in Bennington probably longer than they would perhaps care to, although Richard is the proud owner of a Bennington automobile, I understand. So they're going to make a presentation for us tonight, and I will note that there is also a public meeting scheduled for the 29th of June at the Greenwald Auditorium at Bennington College, and it starts at 5:30.
What time?
5:30.
5:30
Wednesday.
Yeah, I think it's at the Kappa.
Is it not at Cal?
Yeah, that's Kappa. That's the way it was.
Is that the same?
Yeah, that's.
Well, actually, they're not.
No, they're
not the same
different.
building.
Yeah,
They're
it's
different.
Kappa in the.
The last meeting you had was in the Greenwald Auditorium, which is in the main building. The CAP is a separate structure.
They'll find their way. And Chuck and Richard, you are familiar faces around the community, and we welcome you as we should make you honorary citizens or something of North Bennington. But we'll wait.
Well, thank you very much, but really I think the credit goes to Richard. I've been here a bit, but Richard's really spent considerable time. He actually wanted me to do the presentation so that I could bumble my way through, but he will come to my rescue to make sure we get the information you want. So we put together a few slides. We'll go through them, but we really want to be here to have some dialogue, make sure we're answering your questions, make sure you all know what's been going on and what direction we're headed in, and certainly your feedback would be really appreciated. So again, I've got some slides. I'll try not to take too long to zip through them, but our real intent is to be here to answer your questions.
Good.
So with that, we thought the most important thing we can do is provide you with an update of all the different sampling we've done over the past 3 months plus with private wells, soils. We'll get a little into some of the recommendations from our Department of Ag and Health on gardening and farming. We've done surface water, sediment, and fish sampling, and sludge and septic. We've also had worked with the responsible or potentially responsible party, St. Gobain, to have their contractor install a point of entry treatment systems. So we'll give you an update on that. And then lastly, and I think this is where we probably need the most input from you all, is the discussion on extending water lines. So that's what we plan to talk about. So to date, we've collected 460 samples. If you'd asked me back in February whether that would have been possible and whether we would have done that, I would have said no way. But here we are. 164% or 35% were clean. So I guess that's kind of good news that it wasn't all contaminated. But what that means is 53% or 243 samples were greater than the 20 part per trillion standard. So we have this map, and I apologize, let me know if you can't hear me, but just so, and I think you all know this, but we started in that first Friday, the first meeting, drawing a 1.5 mile radius when we got these few results here that came back. And to be honest, we really felt like that was very conservative, that we would define the problem with that first effort. So as the story goes, we had a detect out here, so we expanded. We had some here. We had a fair amount here, so we have continued to expand the area. And then we found this whole area, which is maybe directly or indirectly related. We believe it's not necessarily potentially spread by air like we think this may have been, but this may be more groundwater coming from the landfill. And this map, I will say, I apologize, we have another version that just came out. I did not get it uploaded, but we've expanded in here because we had something text out here and here and here. So that is on our webpage. You can see it if you ever need a copy. We'd be happy to send it to you. We are hopeful that this, we can't go any farther here. Fortunately, thanks for this mountain. And we have a lot more blue down here, so we feel very comfortable. It's not shown here. So we're really running out of wells to test. So,
What do the colors indicate?
oh, thank you. I should have said it. So blue is non-detect. These small yellowish ones are detects, but below the 20 part per trillion standard. The yellow is between 20 and 100. The orange, 100 to 1,000, and the red, greater than 1,000 parts per trillion. So you can see some of the worst areas are really closest to the plant.
Shaban, can you just go through the potential sources that are identified on this map so people can look at themselves?
Yeah, so here is the former ChemFab in North Bennington, which was the original request for us to sample near because of what happened in Hoosick. They also had a plant here, the original one. You guys know this better than me. So that's why we sampled here, and although most of this is municipal, we were surprised to find as many wells that were still not connected. So that led us here, and then the Kosher Drive dump and the Bennington landfill. So those were all places we looked to see, and we've gotten help, as you all know, from EPA. The preliminary sampling of the monitoring wells showed the PFOA in it, which led us to do more widespread. We also had a woman at the first or second county that requested sampling. We thought it was crazy to go way out here, but we did it, we found it, and hence we continued to sample.
When was the last sampling? Has that pretty much run its course with the initial samplings?
The last sampling will be this Thursday.
Okay. Have there been any resamplings?
We did some original resampling, and we'll come up with a plan on how we're going to do follow-up sampling for homes that are currently being sampled.
Are there any questions about sampling before we get to other?
Just a reminder, in terms of the parts per trillion that you have found, what is the number of parts per trillion that Vermont allows or sees as
The
least?
health department established a 20 part per trillion health advisory level.
Okay.
When this all broke, there was a provisional short-term exposure level of 400 parts per trillion that EPA had established for other problems in the country. And then Region 2 developed 100 part per trillion, same idea, provisional standard for the New York area for Hoosick. And with all the pressure now in New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire's also found this problem, there was a lot of pressure for EPA to finish up their formal standard, which they did release at 70 parts per trillion. And there's PFOA and there's PFOS, which is typically found in firefighting foam. So their standard is 70 for each, or if you have them together, a combined 70. So our health department recently released, or is soon to release, a combined 20 for Vermont as well. But we have not really seen PFOS here, maybe 1 or 2 samples, 1 sample. So we don't think that PFOS is a problem, but the PFOA clearly we know is a problem.
Do you have?
Yeah, I do. Can you go back to the last slide?
Yes?
In that area that you pointed to that constituted the former dump, where is,
Bennington landfill?
okay, yes. So have you speculated or come to some conclusion, because there seems to be a wide gap or an area that is not polluted that is adjacent to that property, and have you speculated or come to any sort of conclusion that it is just slowly leaching away from that property?
It's still really early, but I would say our preliminary indication is that it's coming from groundwater flow from the landfill. But that being said, we have a detect up here that doesn't make sense to us. So there's this problem, this contaminant is very challenging for us because it doesn't necessarily migrate in patterns we typically see, and we're looking at some low concentrations. But this cluster, we believe is regular flow coming from the landfill, but that's not been clearly defined yet because there's more work going on to test these wells and measure the direction of groundwater flow. That hasn't been done yet.
My next question is, there, for lack of a better phrase, is there a DNA equivalent of tracing or identifying specifically the chemical components and therefore following it to adjacent areas?
Not really, not that I know. You can correct me if I'm wrong. We could look at patterns of other, because we do find some of the other perfluorinates at very low concentration. Maybe you could make some.
So there's no signature is the question?
No.
None that we've identified yet. It's not safe. She's saying we've identified the first one.
Jeannie, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I've been wondering this actually. Have you retested any of the wells to make sure that the levels remain the same over time? Or maybe enough time hasn't passed? I guess I'm just wondering, could it test, I'm going to use the word dirty because I don't know what else to say, contaminated today, and a year from now, the reading could be different, either better or worse?
Yeah, sure.
So there has been some retesting. Initially, a number of individuals who were non-detect but had fairly high levels of contaminated wells all around them, individuals who were very concerned about, am I really clean? Come resample my well. So we
had
did.
a couple right in here. Look at those 3 blue and a cluster
of contaminated wells. So we did on several occasions for several different wells, and they came back the same. There were some other wells that we retested that were between 0 and 20, this really low concentration. And some of those came back slightly above 20, slightly below 20, or non-detect. So there is some fluctuation. The good news as far as retesting for consistency and how much it fluctuates over time is that we did our initial sampling St. Cobain hired Culligan to come in and put the point of entry treatment systems on. And part of that sampling plan for those systems is that St. Cobain's contractor, CT Mail, is sampling each of those point of entry treatment systems once a month for 3 months. And so we'll start to see how much things fluctuate over time, because that is a fourth dimension, the temporal. You know, the changing of time can change data.
Yeah.
We have seen changes, 50% or more in some cases. We've also seen consistency. A lot of wells are very similar. And then another issue is how much does the lab that St. Cobain is using vary from the lab that we're using? Is there a difference there? So we have, at the request of some citizens in town, we've started an auditing program where we will go and sample some wells almost on the same day or the next day that CT Mail comes and samples the point of entry treatment systems to make sure they're working efficiently. And one of the nice byproducts of that is we now have data from a different lab to compare with data from St. Cobain's lab. And that's coming out, we've only done it twice, but it's come out very similar. So we don't see a big difference there. And the last thing I'll add to that, that I can think of is we are working on a plan, a formal plan on how we're gonna go back out and resample. So that we're not just picking a one here or one there, we're gonna have a whole approach on how we're gonna do this. So that we do it consistently and fairly, and the public has a chance to weigh in. But we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many variables. Did you have a torrential rainstorm the night, you know?
I have a few more follow-up questions with you. And I think this really goes to the heart of the matter, specifically with respect to the people of Bennington, North Bennington. And that is your satisfaction level with respect to the cooperation of St. Cobain.
Okay, let's save that.
Well, it's
Yes,
related. It's
well,
related.
It's not related right now.
It
We're
is.
talking about
I'm not
sampling.
done. I'm
Excuse
not-
me.
Mr.
You're out of
Chairman.
order.
Mr. Chairman.
No. We'll take about a 3-minute recess. Thank you.
Oh, it's okay. Okay.
Tom, if I have one comment more than a question, and Chuck knows my feeling here. I think it's conjecture to indicate that those wells that are Michael's Drive and Apple Hill are somehow related to the groundwater that's flowing from the landfill. It is a persistently wide area of contamination. I think our monitoring wells could have been contaminated in the same fashion that the other wells were. We studied that landfill to death, 1991 to 1999, and we know that the groundwater flows to the east and south, not to the west and south. And so I've always debated with these folks.
Absolutely fair enough.
And I really, since you went on the record, I have to go on the record and say, I don't believe it, but I'm not a certified engineer.
Yeah, and I completely appreciate that comment, and we know we need to do a lot more work. It just seemed that pattern would indicate more groundwater flow, but we don't have that data yet, so that's a very valid point.
Thank you.
Is that something that's being analyzed?
Yes, yeah.
And just how far along in the analyzation?
EPA is helping us do that. I don't know if you know exactly what stage we're at. I know John Schmelzer, our other project manager, is coordinating that. Not exactly sure.
If you want to know exactly where it's at, it might be good to table that until Wednesday.
Fine.
But certainly, we're looking at trying to figure out how to do a site investigation on that area to confirm or refute that hypothesis.
It's definitely still in the early stages.
Okay.
I'm trying to phrase this the right way. I mean, we know that there are put filters on wells now to extract or remove the PFOA. Is there some point in time, maybe not in my lifetime, maybe in young Jamal's back there, where that water in those wells will not contain PFOA?
It's a great question. Don't have that answer yet.
Okay.
But that is something we'll look at, and I have
Yeah.
kind of toward the end a discussion point to talk with you all about that thinking. So you could also table that too to a little bit later.
Okay, thanks.
So I'll go through these next slides pretty quickly because it's just some additional sampling. So this isn't the best map, but it was showing where we did some surface water sampling. We did Lake Perrin, Perrin Creek, the Walloon Sack. We did a pond on Bennington College. I think that was the areas. And so we took 10 surface water samples, and the results range from non-detect to 79 parts per trillion. So the good news, it was really low. The bad news, it was there. We did 7 sediment samples, 4 were non-detect, and 3 range from 1.2 to 2.4 parts per billion. So that's 1,000 times more than a part per trillion. But at those levels, it didn't pose any risk to human health. The direct contact standard the health department came out with was 300 parts per billion, which I'll go over in the soil piece, nor would it have a detrimental impact on the most sensitive aquatic species. We also collected a number of fish tissue samples. We're really quite frustrated that the lab we sent them to has continued to tell us we need 30 more days. They're preserved and frozen, so they're not violating any protocol, but they keep putting them off. So we've heard end of July now on the fish tissue, which we thought we would have them long ago. So we're still pushing on that. This is just a map of the soil sampling that we did in and around the ChemFab plant. And Richard worked very hard with a consultant that St. Cobain hired, CT Mail, to kind of take sort of concentric rings from the former ChemFab plant and go out and then look at sensitive environments like farms, like schools, playgrounds, daycare centers, things like that. All told, 100 samples were collected, and the results range from non-detect to 45 parts per billion, and the majority of the results were less than 10 parts per billion. Again, the direct contact level of concern was 300 parts per billion. We've had the community ask us, why is it so much higher than drinking? Well, you're drinking a lot of water every day. You're not necessarily being exposed to contaminated soil every day, so the level of intake is going to be much less. Hence, you can handle a slightly higher level. And we concluded that surface soil remediation was not necessary. So that was good news. As a result of the results, the Department of Ag, in conjunction with the Health Department, concluded that they did not expect that the PFOA would be measurable in any produce produced in the area, with the caveat that you use clean water for irrigating. If you were using the contaminated water, they were not saying that. But if you were getting water treated by your poet, or if you have to bring in clean water, if you were concerned, they recommended amending the soil with clean compost, washing the produce after harvesting, and if you have root vegetables, if you peel the root vegetables, you can lower your risk. They also, for livestock, recommended, again, if you give them clean water, it shouldn't be an issue. The PFOA will pass through the animals much more quickly than humans. And then lastly, we took 3 samples of maple syrup, I believe, and they all tested free of PFOA. We were very nervous about that one.
And those samples are taken closest to the facility, closest to
Sludge and septic sampling, that's been a concern of ours. That's been something Richard has said. We have to take care of the private wells first. but I'm a little concerned about the sludge and septic if the water's contaminated going into the wastewater treatment plant or septic tanks. So we did some preliminary sampling. The results coming into the wastewater treatment plant was 350 parts per trillion. We took 5 samples of pressed sludge from the wastewater treatment plant, and the average was 8 parts per billion. We had 2 samples pending, and those come back. Don't have those yet. We also collected samples from septic tanks, and we have collected samples at the local compost operation. Is that the one in Williamstown? So the sludge goes to Williamstown where they make compost. We have collected samples from that, and we will certainly share those results when we get them. So for the point of entry treatment systems, those are 2 cubic foot carbon canisters. We have them in series in a line, so you can, the first one will filter the highest level out, we'll filter the PFOA out, and then when that gets saturated, the second one works. So we have them sampling what comes in, the influent, what's coming out the first canister, and what's coming out the second canister, which we call the effluent. So far, 201 point of entry treatment systems have been installed, which is a really impressive response by CT Mail working for St. Gobain. We've had first-time sampling of 168, and I know we're working on doing that sampling on the rest. Since some of these were installed more than 30 days ago, the plan is to sample them once every month for 3 months. So we've had some 111 sample the second time and 18 sample the third time. And so far the results look fairly good. The influent concentrations have varied from approximately 2,000 to 20 parts per trillion. And the midpoint between the canisters have all been ND, and the effluent has all been ND. So we're very encouraged that the filters are working. What we didn't necessarily expect, and we learned from our neighbors in New York, is that some of the carbon naturally occurring, contains naturally occurring arsenic. So we were aware of that, so we incorporated that into our sampling right away. We didn't want to take out one contaminant and introduce another. And we know that the arsenic will flush itself out in a relatively short period of time. So we've taken 168 arsenic samples to date. The results showed greater than 10, which is the health standard, part per billion, or micrograms per liter in 30 of the 168 samples. And they resampled the second time, and they were all but one was below the standard. And that one that was still above the standard used very little water, so didn't have enough time to flush out. So this is certainly a concern, but I think we're handling it. We're not recommending people drink the water or use the water until we get consistent results back that the filters are working.
How long does that usually take once they're installed?
So just round numbers, about 1,000 gallons of water. So if you're using a lot of water, it might only take a couple days. But the one that was tested 3 times, I looked at their water usage, and it was like 238 gallons over a month period where they sampled 3 times. And that wasn't enough water coming through the carbon to bring the arsenic level down.
So all the installed parties they're well aware of do not use this for drinking.
Yes,
It's not potable.
they're calling us a lot on the results. So they're very interested in how the filters are working.
Yeah.
And it's been a little bit of a frustration on our part because we're relying on the consultant to get us the information.
Yeah.
The private well samples we did with our consultants, we have a little more control on the data. It's not that they're withholding it, but it's just taking them a long time. They're managing a lot of different things, and it's been a little frustrating.
I know originally when we got our first results from the labs, it was basically one result, the next result, the next result, all on the same page. And that's not really a format you can send out to people. And so it took several weeks for the lab to rework their computers to be able to get their results one to a page. So those first sampling results, people really had to wait a long time to get their information. But now we've worked through that, and I think the results are going to start coming a lot more quickly now that the lab is giving us the information, giving the lab the information to CT Mail and then forwarding it to us much more quickly, and then we can get it out the door usually in 2 or 3 days, we get it back out to individuals. The other problem we had, and no knock against Bennington, but there's Bennington, North Bennington, and Shaftesbury, and I've gotten at least a dozen return to senders because I've gotten it one wrong or the other, or people had P.O. boxes that I thought was in North Bennington, but it was in Bennington, and it's just the mail down here is kind of a little crazy, or I just don't understand.
It's the postal service. but-
Postal service, yes.
The mail.
The mail.
Go ahead.
I have a related question with respect to the data that you're collecting and that St. Gobain is collecting. Are you guys sharing that?
Yes.
You are. And is it consistent with what you're finding?
You showed me that one audit study so far.
Yeah, they were very close. The results
Good to know.
from different labs at the same sample. And we're gonna continue, we're gonna do a couple more, and then hopefully put a report together and get that on the web so that people can judge for themselves if they think that's close or not. I didn't want to put it up piecemeal, just a couple data points. Let's get it out, we can send it out, so a couple of months on that.
Thank you.
So my last slide is really sort of a segue to start talking about the water line connections. As you know, Jason completed the engineering study, which gave us a good idea as to, you know, the magnitude of the situation, what it may cost, and identified some areas that, you know, the community really needs to talk about whether it makes sense. We're still working with St. Gobain. The next step would be move into the design phase. We have not gotten a commitment from them yet to move forward with that. We're working hard to try to get that. We definitely have some challenges. Ideally, we would have liked to have had that commitment by July 1, which was kind of a schedule we put together initially, which was very aggressive. But we know that there's a lot of issues both for St. Gobain, for us and the community, where we probably do need to take it a little bit slower and make sure we have a good conversation so we're all on the same page. So I have some points up here to talk about in terms of proceeding, like who wants to connect. Should that be the town lead to gather that information? Do you need us to be the lead on that? We talked about maybe developing a sign-in sheet or a pledge form, something like that, at the next community meeting, just so we get a handle who wants to connect. We know we saw how many wells are impacted, but we don't know. I mean, you've certainly heard from people who are saying, oh, I definitely want to connect. But I think you've heard from others that say, no, I don't really want to connect. So I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, but we definitely need your feedback and input, and you don't have to provide it tonight, but I think if you're willing to talk about it, that's great. If you want to, you know, talk about it as a select board and get back to us, but that's, you know, on our list of things, and we may not need to do it Wednesday, but I could.
Could you, it's been published, the approximate financial exposure to tie in all of the lines through the various communities impacted. I think Jason's got somewhat of those. Can you just give us the overview, Jason?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
You see how fast I can do this.
So while he's getting set up, let me just go through the other two ones that kind of are with us, and then the last bullet we'll talk about after. But I'd love to get your feedback in terms of how you feel about, is it a town, does the town have any say on people who are connecting and not? If we're in a really highly contaminated area and someone doesn't want to connect, is that a concern? So that's on the table. And then there's some outliers that we did ask at the request of the governor that we put everything on the table so we can see every single well that's impacted, what it would cost. So I know besides just the cost, I think the town has other concerns about, you know, running a line a mile out to serve one home. There's other water quality issues that are of concern. So those are things that if you want to provide us with feedback on tonight or at a later date, that would be pretty helpful to us.
Stuart?
Yeah, I'd be
Give us
glad
the
to
overview.
weigh in. I think that it may make sense, in fact, for the town to take the lead on determining how many people want to connect. since they are, in fact, our constituents and our neighbors. I also, and we've had this discussion with the state folks, I think it's really important that this board begin to address the issue of whether or not someone can opt out if the water main actually runs past their property. The risk being that they opt out for the time being. After a while, the POED system becomes a real headache, or they want to sell their property and they can't, and then they want to connect. And then you're looking at, is it at their expense, or is it St. Gobain's expense, or is it some other PRPs responsible for that kind of cost? So I think we need to think about some sort of a town ordinance that in this particular case, we would require that if the water goes by your property, you must connect. Because ultimately, I think everybody will want to connect if in fact the PFOA is as persistent in the water table as it appears to be. So I think that's something we need to address. And when Chuck writes up there, Class 4 designation versus town ordinance, why don't you explain what a Class 4 designation means?
Right, so when we know an aquifer is contaminated above health standards, like what we have, the 20 part per trillion, then we know it's going to be contaminated for years to come. There is a provision in the groundwater protection rule and strategy that directs us to designate it as a Class 4 zone, which means then people can't drill future wells in it in the Class 4. The other tool that we can use in lieu of a Class 4 that the rule allows would be a town ordinance. So if the town passed an ordinance, we know these aquifers, well, that's not my map anymore, we know these areas are contaminated, we don't want any future homeowner to come in, build a home and drill a well, and then, oh, hey, it's contaminated. It's like, yeah, well, we could have told you that. So there can actually be tools in place to prevent that. So that's something that's farther down. That's certainly nothing we have to decide today, but it does fit into the thinking of connecting versus not connecting.
Yeah, and the Class 4 designation, if you look at the incredible area that is covered by the contamination, I mean, that means no development by wells in that entire part of the community, and that's a real issue for us. But when Jason gets into his little presentation, fortunately, we can serve most of the areas that are Bennington's responsibility with our municipal system. And I think those folks who are out there that think that somehow drinking well water is the only way to go, they really ought to start rethinking that, because, I mean, this PFOA has been in the groundwater for probably, whatever it is, 14 years or more since ChemFabs has been here. And it is persistent. It doesn't leave. And that's what's really surprising about the chemical.
Before we hear the price tag, not my colleagues are going to chime in, but it seems like the state's done so much work. We're going to be doing so much work. And you have a line running right by your house. Better plan on hooking up, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to go through all of this effort if you're going to still have outliers that might actually impede the...
And the unfortunate part, I think, in the past, Bennington, when we've extended municipal service to rural areas, we've not forced people to connect, which is why you found as many wells as you did down in the North Side Drive area. I was actually surprised to find out that there were that many there. People who chose not to connect. And where I grew up, that is not allowed. If the municipal service goes by your house, you are connected, generally at your expense.
Jeannie? Yeah.
I don't have any questions right now. I'm still kind of absorbing it.
Yeah.
Okay. If I may, and please indulge me for a second, having grown up in mostly an urban environment where water is always available, water has been clean and been there, if we are successful in doing innovative things in economic development that have people moving here. Wouldn't people from other areas perhaps prefer to have a hookup to municipal water than dig their own wells? And the lack of that ability to hook up would be a disincentive for people to build or buy? I mean, I'm just a kid from Brooklyn. What do I know?
Jeannie, do you have a,
No, I'm just
Okay.
interested in hearing.
you want to find out how much it's going to cost? Go ahead, Jason, now tell
I'll
us.
just give a real, I'll
Yeah,
give a quick
38,000.
overview.
Yep.
Before I go to the price tag. As you can see, the areas of contamination were extensive and varied. This was like a rolling project. We sort of started with the orange area and a little bit of the purple area in March, and we ended up tripling the size of the project by the time we were done writing the report. And we had all these anxiety attacks of me getting new sample results before I got the report issued. So actually we got a little preemptive in this last iteration because we knew we had sample results coming up from 7A, but there's also now emergent areas on Settlers Road and Spring Hill and up on the northern section of Chapel Road, and now on the lower section of Chapel Road as well. So we have not, you'll see we haven't evaluated the lower section of Chapel Road below Crossover Road, because that happened very, very soon, either before or after we issued the report. In brief overview, each one of these areas that are colored are different zones. They have different pressures. We need to deal with the supply of water to those areas a little bit differently. This sort of, the North Bennington Road, Vale Road, Bard Road, all of those areas can be served sort of by the central area, what we call the central zone, which is sort of the same pressure zone as downtown. And then we would be extending water along North Bennington Road. That comes off of a reducing valve out on Northside Drive. Those would be looped and connected. Right now, Northside Drive is one long dead-end line. It's actually a difficult area to manage. It's okay, but if we have to shut anything down, anything past Hicks Avenue, the entire place gets shut down. So we didn't want to exacerbate that problem, so which is why we'd be looking at adding a loop. Same thing for 7A, that line can go up. Based on the existing service area, we can supply water all the way up 7A without adding any additional booster pumps or tanks. The same applies for the Michaels Drive Apple Hill area. That would come off of what's the Chapel Road tank. There's a 3 million gallon tank on Chapel Road that services the blue area, what we call the northern zone. And I wanted to call I guess we're calling that the northeastern zone, and the purple zone, we're calling the northern zone, but I wanted to call it the Arctic zone, but I didn't get that. That area is the only area that we cannot supply with our current setup without doing augmentation. So we'd be looking at providing a very small tank. It's a very low use area. And this is an area that we don't really fully know the full extent of whether there's going to be continued contamination or we're going to have an outlier with a bunch of non-detects. So I think that's sort of remaining to be seen right now. But as Chuck mentioned or Richard mentioned, we basically got tasked with don't worry, don't consider something an outlier or not an outlier. Figure out what you can't supply and can't do and what it would take. So that's what that area would require: a booster pump and a very small tank. And as Richard and Chuck mentioned, our major issue, our major concern, other than pressures and supply, is ensuring that we keep good water quality and keep good residence time. So obviously connections, having more connections is better. There are ways that we can limit residence time by maintaining a smaller line diameter or having a looping setup and making sure that the high uses are at the end and the low uses are in the middle. And so that's sort of what we did. This just shows where we're looking at doing the line extensions, but it's not really any more descriptive than what I've described. We need one reducing valve. We'd like a sustaining reducing valve at a bridge crossing on Houghton Lane to make sure that we keep a very flexible system. We don't want to create additional problems. And then, like I said, up on Chapel Road, we would need a booster pump and tank in order to supply adequate pressure to those areas. So we can get this, we sort of broke it up into zones. And I want to, I'm going to put this number here, and I'm going to say this is a very 35,000 foot number. We have approximately, we're talking about approximately 90,000 lineal feet of pipe. So that's 20 miles that we're looking at adding. There's a lot of design that has to go in between here and there. So we're really not, we're not drilled down into the fine print on this design. So we've been very conservative in our estimation. But if we are looking at servicing all the affected areas, we are looking around $26 million of investment.
Over what period of time?
Over what period of time?
To complete it from start to finish?
I think for me, that's another rolling question. A lot of it comes down to decision on final design and funding. I thought maybe we could see this when we were at the 13 million, we could see this happening in one construction season, but I don't feel that's possible anymore. We're definitely looking at 2. So we could be looking at 17 and 18 for construction. We might, for a number like this, we may be looking at 4 separate construction contracts, and either they can be let in phases or they're let at the same time to different contractors. We probably don't want to get with it. These aren't unideal. They're not unideal projects. It's a lot of uniformity. It's a lot of the same. There's a few specialty items. We've got a few bridge crossings. There might be a little bit of directional drilling. There's a few pieces, like if we've got reducing stations, but we'd likely get a good, we'd be looking at larger scale contractors for these.
Jason?
We're luckily tied into the Albany market, so they do exist for us.
Excuse me, Jason, and it may be somewhere else in your report, but is there any indication of federal monies that might be available as supplements to help with this?
So my understanding, yes, there's the natural program, if we're looking for a loan program, is like the Water State Revolving Loan Fund. My understanding is that we are looking for the contaminant, the source of contamination to be the provider of funds. In our PER, in our preliminary engineering report, we did not state that the town would necessarily be committing their own public dollars to that yet. But I wouldn't know from an EPA level whether there's actually grant money available.
I don't even want to go there to do deference to my colleague. I think the tail on this donkey is going to be pinned in the right spot. And the essence of that is the community is going to expect the donkey to put that tail on.
Right, yeah, and I guess I should just say our report was very much limited to, can we do this, what will it cost, as opposed to looking at a full suite of funding opportunities.
Good question.
I think I do have one more question.
Sure. Oh, go ahead.
Before you go, if I can just add on to that, we feel the same way you do. There are more traditional ways at looking at funding, raising bonds, and we were like, that shouldn't be up to the community. We're committed to getting this done as quickly as possible, and if we access those kind of monies, the process will slow. But that's a big number, so we are challenged getting the donkey to the table, but we are trying our hardest. So that's the safest thing I can say right now.
And I agree with my colleague and our chair, Tom Jacobs. The only other question I have is one I always want to pose in a situation like this. What's the cost of not doing this? I think we all know. Yeah.
So the cost of not doing it, in my opinion, I think is actually very difficult.
Yeah.
From an engineering standpoint, the question is, what are the constraints
Yeah.
of not doing something, so, and we have a lot of unknowns, and you guys can stand up and totally cut me off whenever you feel like it.
Part of that might-
Okay, so for me as a community member, I'll sort of step a little bit outside of the engineering realm, and I ask the question, okay, I look at these areas and I say, well, maybe there are some areas that are developed to meet somewhat their maximum potential. There are other areas that are low density and are likely to stay that way. But it's not, but I guess I think about if I've got an area that has consistent contamination and we are concerned, we, the state and community, are concerned about this aquifer not providing us with water that meets standards, that if we don't have a municipal option in that area, that we've essentially taken a low-growth area and made it a no-growth area. And I don't know how to put a price tag on that. I mean, I look at this number and I divide it by the number of homes that are affected. And I did this sort of as a what if, you know, what's the price tag per dwelling, just for construction costs. So I look at that and I think, well, okay, that's a lot, and then I could divide it by the number of homes that it would serve, and I get that lesser number. But then I don't know what the future growth is there. I don't think any of us do in this room, and I think the thing that's really concerning to me is just, you know, we're talking about, you know, we're essentially talking about a quarter of the land area in Bennington being affected by this. And that's a huge...
I think the price of not doing is unmanaged risk, and I don't like that.
Right.
Thank you.
And I was just going to add, the one thing that we've discussed with St. Cobain is the alternative to not connecting is managing these poets. And that's a pretty significant cost because they only work if they're maintained, if carbon is changed out, if you're monitoring. So you start adding up the cost of all those poets and all the sampling and the changing, and you know, I don't know that you get to 25 million quick, but you would get there.
You finished with your comments, Jason?
Is there any other questions that I can help you with?
I think we covered this at the meeting we had about the water sewer, that we have the infrastructure to add all these folks on, that's not a problem.
Oh, you're talking about from
And
source?
engineering.
From source?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I could give you the fun chart, but I won't geek out on that.
I just wanted, that was more for the.
But yeah, if we added, your sources, your combined source of primary and secondary gives you 3.9 million gallons per day. The max you're using in the winter time is 2.7. And that was 2015. 2016, you had 2.1 million gallons per day. So that's max day. We're talking about adding maybe 150,000 gallons a day to the system. So it's a very small number compared to what you have remaining. You still have a serious amount of source left.
Before we take questions from the audience, what is the sense of the board right now, knowing what we know, knowing what we don't know? Whatever. What is your feeling? Jim, maybe you can.
I'd like to listen to my fellow board members first before I speak.
I'm inclined to strongly encourage people to tie in if it's going by their property. If that's your question.
Yep, part of it.
Okay.
Yep. Who pays for it is,
I'm hoping that it will be St. Cobain.
okay. Jeannie?
Well, I agree. I think extending the lines is something that's really necessary to do. I think it makes sense to have people connect in if the line goes by their house, that we should try and connect them in. And I need to think about it a little more, but I think having a Class 4 designation seems like there's an advantage to that, because then it's a statewide designation that we're not messing around with a town ordinance that can change over time. Because I am concerned about people drilling wells and not recognizing that they're in a contaminated area.
Michael?
think we need to encourage people to tie into the municipal system, and I see that as a positive for people who now have contaminated wells, which will stay that way for God knows how long, number one. Number two, extending that system and making it more robust and available to people who don't have it now, to my mind, is always it's an opportunity for growth, too. And the third thing is, we need to do whatever we need to do.
And I'd like to just go off of your economic growth, because absent a real plan and an installation, that's going to impact upon our ability to grow this community. If you have uncertainty and you live in an uncertain community and a house in an uncertain community, that's going to impact your economic livelihood as well as the entire town, not to say the health issues that go with it. So I don't think we can just waltz away. We just have to find out the best way to make it happen the soonest in the most practical way.
I'd just close by saying that, touching on two of the things, the two central topics, and that is, looking into the municipal water supply and touching on economic development. And there are vast swaths of undeveloped property there. And for some potential property owners, people that plan to build there, that's a risk. And it can at least be ameliorated to a relatively safe degree that, with a safe municipal water supply, that property wouldn't be lost for however long that the contaminant is there.
And again, we're fortunate in this community to have an abundance of good quality water coming into our system. And I would hate to think if we didn't have that, where we would be, what we'd be talking about tonight. So we're remediating a problem that was brought on not by nature, but by man, and this is probably the most practical way to resolve it.
Amen.
Go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Yep. But maybe better, I don't think the viewing audience can hear the question better. Yeah, you better, just to make sure.
If any of you doesn't know, we have the reporters, so just to make sure that everybody knows that I'm asking
That's right.
questions. So Jason, when we first saw this report, we saw two different reports, studies. We saw two different studies. Is this the overall study that affects everything, or is this the study that just affects Bennington?
Right, that's a great question. It's just Bennington. So Otter Creek Engineering is the engineer for the water system in North Bennington, and they have, we agreed at a very early meeting in April on where Bennington's water would stop and North Bennington's water would pick up, or vice versa. So we took, it ends at the sort of at a couple units down from Murphy Road, or the intersection of Austin Hill and Murphy Road going west. That's our end for Murphy Road. And then North Bennington Road, I don't know the physical house location, but it's basically would be the last house before you get into North Bennington on North Bennington Road. So everything west of that, including the outliers within Bennington, which would include Orbed Road and Riverside Drive, is that right? River Road, Harrington Road, all of those dwellings out there would be picked up by North Bennington's water system.
And do you know, or do you guys know from the state, whether Otter Creek has also done an updated study?
Yeah,
The
they
original
issued
study was 17 million, and this is just going up from...
Okay, my original study was 13 and a half.
Right, but I mean, originally collectively, So this is
Yes.
26 million plus whatever out of.
That's correct. It would be 26 plus 5 or 6. So I believe that theirs went out to us on Friday. I believe DEC's been really good about getting that posted. I believe it's on the state, our report is on the state website, if anybody wants to read it. And Otter Creek's report is also on the state, would be on the same state website.
Okay.
It's correct. We had a huge expansion. Like I said, when I first started, this basically Vale Road through North Bennington Road was the only area we worked.
All right, and then to the select board, the question is, are you guys going to be looking to come up with some kind of a suggested path forward that is with and without St. Cobain? The reason I ask this is, of course, if you guys say, yeah, we definitely need this, and then if for whatever reason St. Cobain either doesn't want to pay or only wants to pay so much, do you guys want to commit the town to going forward anyhow? Do you want to go forward, commit to going forward to certain?
No, it's basically,
Sit down.
I don't want to prejudice anything, but we're going to make sure that our folks have potable water and that those citizens get that water from the town of Bennington, and we expect to be indemnified by the party that created the problem. But we're not going to wait forever for them to make up their mind. We're going to have to move sooner if they don't move with a reasonable diligence. And we hear these big numbers, and frankly, that does not impress me, that should be a reason for not doing what they need to do.
Would they,
With St. Cobain.
Yeah, and unless and until they stop being cooperative, so far, St. Cobain has been exceedingly cooperative by all the state parties. I think Stu would say the same.
I think that's true. And Chuck can bear that out. I think there is some hesitation now.
Yeah, they absolutely have been amazingly cooperative. I think we're starting to hit some bumps in the road, which is probably understood. We tried to get them to commit to at least let's get going with the engineering design. We're not quite there yet. We haven't ended our conversations, so we're still working on them, but we've got the toughest road ahead for sure. And I think it's because, as Jason said, the problem keeps growing. When we had it kind of manageable, I think we could have had earlier success, but it's big.
If you need the essence of the willpower of the community, you're going to find that you'll have that willpower, and we'll be marshaling that as needed.
That's great.
Okay.
We need
That's
that.
the message we want to deliver.
Excellent.
Okay. Anything else that the board has? Thank you.
Yeah, one thing.
Yeah.
I hate to be a nudge on this, but back to your slides, Rich and Chuck, you have a slide on arsenic, and when people see that word, they'll come away with the word, but I'd like you to repeat your explanation of it if you could. Does that make sense?
It's naturally occurring in the carbon that acts as a great medium for flushing.
Yeah.
And it is a short-term, so the virgin carbon that they put together, it flushes out pretty quickly.
Okay.
So Richard used the rule of thumb of about 1,000 gallons.
Okay.
So the good news is, the bad news is it's there, the good news is it doesn't stay there for long. So it's good you brought it up, it's good to reemphasize that.
Yeah,
It is
that-
naturally occurring,
Yeah.
so it's not a man-made contaminant, and it does flush itself out.
Thank you. I just wanted you to repeat that assurance. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all you do for the communities that have been faced with this problem, and whatever resources that we can provide to assist you in your efforts. Stuart's, he's very knowledgeable and very helpful to the board, keeping us informed, as well as your weekly reports. The community should feel very comfortable that the state of Vermont and the towns have stepped up.
Great, and we really appreciate the support we've gotten from the town, and anytime you want us to come back, please have Stuart give us a call. We're welcome to come Richard's gonna buy an apartment down here, I know, it's just a matter of time.
He knows all the streets, I don't know so much on the route side. Are there any questions from the folks that are here? You also have even a broader opportunity to chat on Wednesday evening at Kappa at
Correct.
5:30, so. by all
And just one other thing, I don't know if it will get widespread, we are gonna put up some signs too, but we're gonna get there an hour before, so if people have real specific questions about their POET results or any sampling results, we'll make ourselves available, certainly after the meeting as well, but we're specifically gonna be there an hour before so that if people have, and I know that's hard at 4:30, and we'll certainly stay after too, but we will make ourselves available before the meeting as well if you want to see individual results.
And I expect you'll be talking, you'll get questions on the blood samplings and all of those types of things.
Health department will be there to
Yeah.
talk about the blood sampling, yes.
Good.
Yep, and they are going to put together I hope it's like a fact sheet, so it can help people to, here's what you should expect, here's what it means, kind of fact sheet.
Great.
So that people don't get the results and then, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Tom, one comment, and perhaps you can address it, Chuck. We're hearing now that POET systems are not necessarily readily available. There's been delays in receiving those and installing them. That's not true then?
No, the only ones I know of for sure, there are several poets that are oversized, so they're not stocked. They have to be specially ordered and designed.
Okay.
And those take a little bit longer to come in. I think that's for a couple of the transient community systems. I haven't heard about other ones that are.
And the other thing that follows that is we've also been hearing that when these systems break down, that parts are hard to get. I don't know if that's true or whether that's just rumor that's out there as well.
I mean, you're closer to the problem than I, so you might know better, but having spoken a lot with Culligan, they have all the materials they need. Again, when they get a large order, like when we expanded south of the landfill, it did take them a week or so to get all the parts in because that's a lot of systems at one time. But as far as I know, they have all the material they need.
Thank you.
I can confirm that with them as well.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Right?
Thank you. We're all set.
Thank you.
See you Wednesday.
Yeah, see you Wednesday.
All right. The next item on our agenda is the discussion relative to a new Article 30 property maintenance ordinance. As the board will recall, we started this discussion. Mike Harrington shared a draft of an ordinance, a discussion document, and since then, there's been effort to go back, not to the drawing board, but to take it back and look at some other areas that were of concern by the board members, and I think that's what we got, discussion.
Great. So I'll just reiterate what you have in front of you, and you'll see on the memo there on the front page is a culmination of the feedback we received at the last conversation. 3 main points. One, we decided to remove the portions that were impacting occupied single-family or 2-family dwellings. So again, those were around the maintenance of occupied single-family or 2-family dwellings and focused only on the maintenance of multi-unit dwellings, commercial buildings and spaces, and all vacant properties. So
The rationale for that, Mike, was just because it was too big a bite to take the first?
I think from feedback we received from the board, that was certainly the most contentious area. If it's something that the select board feels that it's needed and should be put back in, we can certainly discuss how best to do that. But this, I think, hits on most of the major issues we see without impacting the general property owner of a single-family dwelling. So again, if you feel that it is of significant importance and it should be added back in, we can certainly discuss how best to do that.
Mike, I've got a clarification with respect to, first of all, when we talked about this, I expressed a desire to not penalize those people who are doing their best, but may not be able to meet it financially. So just as a point of clarification, when we exclude single or double family, let's say duplexes, are we confining it to the people who own and occupy that property? Or are we not including property owners who are not residents of that? In other words, it's a second party that owns and rents that either single dwelling house or duplex.
The way it's written, it would be, if it's a single-family home, whether it's the property owner or a renter, or a duplex, whether it's the property owner or not. So we wouldn't be impacting any of those properties with a focus on the maintenance portion.
I'm sorry, but I've got to say that I've got a problem with that. If this is owned separately by a third party or a second party, and they're not being held to account to keep that property kept up, I don't know, Mike, I think we need to cover that.
Well, that's up to the select board, and tonight, that's what our focus of the conversation is.
If it's a duplex owner occupied, you know, they live on one side, mom lives on the other,
Right.
that's one thing. But if it's a rental property,
Yes.
they should, you know,
Yeah.
that absentee owner, so all should be held to a
The
standard.
same
yeah.
standards
Yeah.
that we're
Okay.
outlining here.
Yeah, if I could jump in, what you're talking about really, Jim, is any building that's classified as a public building. A single-family home that's rented
Or
out
commercial.
is considered a public building.
They're explicitly excluded, but that's just 3 words, we can change it.
Yeah. So that's what you're trying to address.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Well, I was just wondering what recourse a citizen would have if there was an occupied but not maintained structure next door to them. So there would be nothing
At this time, based on,
because they're excluded
right.
from this. so there
If
isn't
it's
anything
a,
else.
right, if it's a privately owned single-family or duplex. Yeah, go ahead.
We did think long and hard about this, and I talked pretty extensively with Larry McLeod and Kevin Goodhue, and they said really the problems they see are with the vacant single-family buildings and
With the what?
two-families.
Vacant.
The vacant properties, and they are included. If it's a vacant property, whether it's single-family, two-family, multifamily, commercial building, they're included. So it's a very, small subset of properties that are excluded in deference to concerns raised by the select board and others that, these are people's homes and we shouldn't be too intrusive with regard to those single-family, two-family. But like I said, we can strike 3 words in here and they're back in, so it's up to you folks.
I have a comment and 2 questions, if I may. Mike, if you would just remind everybody how long people have been working on this and how many realtors, developers, property owners.
It started probably about, at this point, over a year, probably a year and 3 months ago, in working closely with the BBC, and through the Better Bennington Corporation, having focus groups with realtors, business owners, downtown property owners, to see what were the biggest challenges in downtown and what was preventing buildings from being occupied, or were the vacant buildings or spaces in downtown impacting the surrounding businesses. So that's where it started, and we've done probably 3 or 4 iterations of this. We had, I think, 2 iterations of the ordinance before it even came to the board, and then obviously.
Yeah, and you've also looked at best practices from other towns, other municipalities. I mean, the comment I want to make is this is something that's necessary. And I think before it gets old enough to vote itself, we should literally vote it in, and we can always tweak it later on. There's only so much time you can spend on these things before they go into effect. That being said, 2 questions I have. Number 1, how adequate are the resources that we have in town staff? How much time do they have? They have the time to be able to go and inspect all these properties, monitor them, provide reports, for example, to our town manager and to the select board on the status of required changes, required improvements?
That has also been something we've talked extensively with internally. The initial impact will be probably more the influx of properties registering their vacant properties. There are a handful of significant properties that require significant maintenance or are currently significantly unmaintained. And so those would be ones we might focus on first. But a lot of this will be also based on comments or feedback concerns that we get from the general public.
Thank you.
So Stuart can certainly talk to staffing and that availability, but I think what we'll look for are the most egregious cases and work back from there.
How did you arrive at the $250 a day fine?
That's
what
our
drove that
current
number?
structure, so state statute through our current building
Right.
regulations.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, this is maintenance. This doesn't preclude the health department getting involved in issues. That's a whole different, and that applies to any and every building. This is maintenance.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
We have existing health ordinances relative, we have unregistered vehicle ordinances, all of those things. This is an augmentation to try to respond to what we've seen, some derelict properties around that need to be attended to. How did you arrive at the registration of 40 miles from Bennington? Is that
Well, I think it was possibly Gene, who, just the conversation was based on not necessarily, I think we had said outside of Bennington, but it was really based on distance. So how far away and how easy is it for someone to
take care of it?
Take care of their property.
Thanks.
I should say for tonight, and having talked with Tom, really tonight, looking for any general feedback you have, if there are areas of concern or things you would like changed or altered or considered, to receive that feedback and really just have an open dialogue tonight. And then, once we feel like we have a draft that is ready for public viewing, we'll put it up on the website, and then we can start having our more formal meetings and eventually vote on what we have before us.
I agree with Michael that we'd like to get this moving through that process because it does have a lifetime of its own, it seems. I don't like to think about having to change an ordinance once we do because of all of that process, but this is a living process, we'll just deal with the circumstances and let's see how we can do getting us a good version maybe sometime in early second meeting of July, warn it for the first hearing, so-called, and if there are folks in the community that want to come out, they can do that.
I think also there's this great alignment between this ordinance and the financial incentives that we approved a month ago.
Yeah.
I think we're covering everything as well as we can.
Tom, are you thinking, just so when I put this out for the public, that the 25th, we would consider our first reading for public comment and then vote at a following meeting?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that all right?
Yeah, good deal.
Thanks for the continuing effort,
Great.
Mike and Dan.
Yeah, happy to, thank you.
And like you said, if we have any other ideas or comments, share them between now and then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
feel free to
Same way
shoot
with
me an
the
email, or I'm
public.
happy to sit
Yep.
down and talk it.
And this draft, is that available other than to the board members tonight?
It will be, so starting tomorrow, it'll go up on the web as long as you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
There were some pictures that you're going to not make readily available.
So they are in your packet, and those, again, were just samples of properties, and again, we left them private because it was more to give a visual explanation for you when considering the ordinance,
Yeah.
but obviously
I see
for
that's
protection of the property.
Not appropriate.
Yeah.
I just want to say, Mike, that last picture I found deliciously ironic. And you're right, and they should be very heavily
For the public who doesn't know, the last picture in there was of the town highway garage that's on Depot Street. So, and I had conversations with both Dan and Stu about this, that,
look at that.
you know, I wanted us to be able to also let the public know that, you know, we too need to take care of our properties just as much as the general public does, so.
That's a.
And that's part of a much
That's a
bigger
request for,
What you said.
Yeah, yeah.
it's a request for a new
And
garage.
to Stuart's defense, I mean, a town highway garage has been on the list for a long time, so, a new town highway garage.
And yes, I mean, we've been deferring maintenance.
Yeah.
Coat of paint might help, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Moving on, we've got a borrowing.
Yes, we have two borrowing items for you tonight. The Recreation Center note is actually titled the Bond Anticipation Note. That's for $162,000 and $2,013, I'm sorry.
Can we waive the reading of that?
Yeah, motion to waive the reading and accept the note. There are 3 signature pages that you all need to sign on, and they're marked.
Got a motion, second? Second.
I'll make a motion that we waive the reading of both notes.
All in favor? Aye.
And just for the folks out there, the second one is a capital equipment note, which is a borrowing that is allowed under state law using a fixed interest rate through the state of Vermont for another large dump truck. And I shall circulate both for your signatures.
Thanks, Sue. Managers report?
I have no manager's report tonight. We had a great report on the PFOA issue, so I don't have to do anything with that this evening. And I was anticipating that discussion would perhaps run a little long, so I didn't worry, and I don't really have anything for you.
Great, thanks, Sue. Appreciate it.
And if I could just clarify, it is at Kappa, not at Greenwald Auditorium. The location has changed since a week ago. So,
Thanks, Stu, for keeping us on top of it here. With your engineering expertise, it makes it a lot easier to understand as a layperson.
well, you know, it will be interesting in the long run now that the nation is really focused through EPA on the PFOA issue and the long-term contamination as to really what this does or can do to the human condition over an extended period of time. We don't know that yet.
Board members, Jeannie, would you have any other business that you'd like to bring?
I just wanted to remind everyone that this Friday night is the first Friday, and there'll be things going on downtown. The museum is open from 5 to 8, and I don't know what else is going on, but I'm sure there's going to be some great stuff, so come on out and enjoy the night.
July 4th weekend, right?
Yes.
It's Friday's July 1st, though.
Yeah, right.
Fireworks are scheduled for 9:30 Monday evening.
Great. So it'll be a beautiful evening in southern Vermont. Jim?
Put my order in for my spelling.
All right. What's,
No,
any?
nothing else.
Really? Okay. A couple things that I just wanted to, the trailhead parking, you know, a couple folks have asked me, you know, when are they going to be parking their vehicles there, Dan?
Sure.
We just, a couple of weeks met with the Green Mountain Club, Green Mountain Power in the town to do our pre-construction meeting. As you know, that area is underneath a power easement, so we had to get Green Mountain Power's approval. All the documentation is in place, the easement, the agreement with Green Mountain Power. We also have the engineering plan for the construction of the project, so it's now about scheduling. As you know, we're going to build the first phase of the Ninja Path in July, and I'm hoping that RJ can schedule the trailhead work in August, so that's our tentative schedule.
Okay.
It will be done this construction season, barring any major natural catastrophes.
They're not allowed.
So we will have that trailhead in place for the fall.
Foliage?
Fall foliage,
Yeah.
hopefully. That's
Good.
RJ's committed to getting that done for us. And
Good.
again, like I said, we should have the first phase in the Ninja Path done and commenced in July, so.
That's great. The only other thing is a stand-up pedestrian signage, a stand-up pedestrian, no crossing, no crossing, stopping for pedestrians in front of the Welcome Center. Could we get that? One of those signs that said pedestrian, yeah, pedestrian crossing.
Oh, yes, we're aware of that and hope to have that there soon. There is
I just saw some little old lady.
There is some concern about being able to make that turn from Hillside, and I'm not sure about Elm, but it's a very sharp turn at Hillside, and
RJ is very concerned that it will only last for a couple of days because trucks will take it out. The turning movements there make it difficult to maintain anything in the middle of the highway. So RJ felt strongly that it was not worth the effort to put it in, but if we want to put it in a trial basis, that's Stuart's call.
It's probably a good response, and I'm not an engineer, but it looks like, that walkway, crosswalk is a little north of that, so.
And just to, I remember when I had my food cart and I was required to put up chain and other warnings, I got a hold of a highway, signage kind of thing, and they had a spinning, it was three-sided spinning warning, for a crosswalk area, and that might, I'll be, the truck's taking it out, it'll spin, but it won't get taken out.
But they're supposed to be using the bike, well, I guess they can't.
we'll take a look. I hadn't heard that RJ had looked at it yet because he's been on vacation, so we'll take a look at it, and we'll do the math.
And the final question is, budget-wise, we're ending up the year.
Still don't have final numbers because we tend to see, the audit allows us to incorporate expenditures that occur or are billed 60 days after. But the auditors are there. They started working today. I believe that Melissa is as ready as she's ever going to be. The numbers continue to look good. In fact, we're paying down on the bond anticipation note for the rec center once again this year, and we hope to really have that paid off within a matter of, I think it's 3 years, and that'll be done. So we're doing well. We're doing well.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I want to acknowledge Chris Bates and Stephanie Calabro of Sturcott Design. Yesterday, they had a Southern Vermont cooking challenge up at Madison's Brew Pub upstairs, with half of the proceeds, I think, going to the Bennington County Coalition for the Homeless. I was there. I think Jeannie was there as well. There were about 60, 65 people. Good music and good food, and I want to congratulate them on doing that and completing that initiative and keeping the Bennington County Coalition for the Homeless uppermost in their minds.
Thank you.
I have two things, both coming up on Wednesday. First, there is the gift basket raffle for the park at 3:36 is happening at Ramonto's on Wednesday from 5:30 to 8. You can get raffle tickets up through, I think, the first hour, up until 6:30. And the prizes are fabulous. And then after that, you can go to the Wednesday movie nights at Nichols parking lot. It's brought to you by Bringing You Vermont. It's at 8:30. Bring your chair, and there are classic movies from the 1920s through the 1950s. And it's free.
That's great.
Amazing.
The Nichols parking lot.
Yeah, bring your chair.
He does it on the building.
Great.
Projects it onto the building.
Don't have to worry about the sound system then, right?
What?
No sound?
Yeah, there's
No,
sound.
there's sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the 20s? Okay.
Oh, in the 20s.
There was organ music.
That's right. Yeah, I really like
What are
that.
the movies?
Yeah.
What are the movies on that?
I don't know what the movie is this Wednesday.
The Bitter Tea of General Yin with Sunset Carson and Anna Mae Wong. How about that?
I'm hoping for Audrey Hepburn
Yeah.
myself.
Is that it, Jean? Any other business? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, there is a second. Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.